Hi, everyone. First of all, I wanted to thank the organizers for the complete, necessary, and well-coordinated work they are doing. And what for me is an extraordinary pleasure to take part of this event and to share knowledge with professionals who I have very often read and admire. Well, I want to talk about the role of physical therapy in people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy. Frequently, the main target for physical therapy is enabling patients to maintain or recover a healthy and sustainable movement against gravity, and usually over the floor. In addition, movement can be not only an objective, but a therapeutic tool. Let's see the index. I will try to explain why it is important to assess several foot and ankle aspects and how to do it. I will do the same with the assessment of global movement performance. In relation to therapeutic education, again, I will talk about foot and ankle and global function. And at the end, I will finish sharing some conclusions. So about assessment. In relationship with foot and ankle assessment, it is crucial to take into consideration plantar pressures and shear forces. They can be measured, for example, with force platforms. They depend on fundamental aspects of gait where physical therapy can help. We used to worry about ground reaction forces, but previous forces towards the ground need to be also considered. Both aspects depend on ankle and first range of motion measured with a digital goniometer, and at the same time, we can test the quality of the movement or joint stiffness, which very often will be related to soft tissue surrounding the joint. It is important to assess how hard it is to achieve certain joint position. And on the other hand, ankle and foot strength measured with a dynamometer and seldom addressed by preventive medicine, although it has been found a decrease of 45% of ankle and feet strength when comparing people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy and healthy subjects. Intrinsic foot muscles could be considered a foot core similar to the lumbopelvic one. What about sensory domain? Related to small sensory fibers, it has been evidenced that neuropathic pain affects gait stability. It can be measured through several questionnaires: pain quality assessment scale, neuropathic pain scale, brief pain inventory adapted to diabetic peripheral neuropathy, among others. On the contrary, temperature has not been found to interfere with postural control abilities. About large somatosensory fibers, besides testing ankle reflexes, we have to examine the sole of the foot, which is a sensory map that provides the central nervous system with position of the body. And deep foot and ankle proprioceptive afferents are key for postural control in weight-bearing activities. Recently, I have used for my investigation the Cumulative Somatosensory Impairment Index, which is a validated tool for people with diabetes. It's composed by 4 tests measuring large somatosensory fibers function related to postural control. They are pressure, vibration, proprioception, and graphesthesia. I want to highlight that plantar pressure detection is measured through 4.31 and 4.56 grams monofilaments to test postural control abilities. Of course, electrophysiology assessment is considered the gold standard for nerve conduction studies, while microneurography of foot and ankle is the best option for single nerve fiber analysis. About global function assessment, it is important to know how much physical activity our patients do, and it is possible to measure it through the questionnaire EPAC diabetes. It is also crucial to know how do they perform that activity, because people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy pulse up to 15 times more than healthy people. Moreover, after 1 year follow-up, As a consequence, fear of falling is stronger in them, and fear itself increases the risk of falls. The biggest large fiber sensory damage, the biggest fear of fall. Therefore, it's key to restore peripheral sensory mechanisms and learn how to manage postural reactions. The Up and Go test is a simple and inexpensive validated test which measures the risk of falls using a specific diabetic cutoff score of 10.7 seconds. Slow motion videography, gyroscopes, and force platforms are useful for analyzing our patients' movement. In relation to walking, we must know that people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy perform a conservative walking, mainly due to sensory loss. We find a wider base of support, larger double support time, lower gait, and non-adjusted muscular effort, and more gait variability. Plantar pressure distribution during walking depends not only on the foot contacting the floor, but on what's happening with the swinging leg and with the upper body. Joint stiffness and lack of motor control over them leads to a reduction in shock absorption and instability. Hip extension, pelvic step, trunk pelvic stiffness, and spine flexibility affect plantar pressure, as it has been seen, for example, in scoliosis. What about the education? What about foot and ankle? Well, what can we educate? Well, we can educate large fibers somatosensory thresholds. We train our patients so that they can discriminate surface hardness using several types of foam rubber. By doing it, changes in the position of the center of mass in a static position were obtained in a randomized controlled trial. Let's take a look to the following exercise. Oh, sorry. Here. That's it. Could reaction forces be sensed by our participants if they are paying attention to them? In a recent study, we have found that sensory motor training achieves significant improvement of pressure and proprioceptive sensibility in people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy. Remember, not only sensory and motor training components, but attention plays an essential role. Well, there are several randomized controlled trials, studies showing significant improvements through range of motion education, strength, and resistance exercises in people with distal symmetric polyneuropathy, achieving primary diabetic foot prevention and secondary prevention in people with recently healed plantar foot diabetic ulcers. Here you can see several examples of the exercises. With the hallux, the rest of the toes, ankle movements, and other parts of the legs. In relation to global movement education, it is worth saying that central nervous system compensates peripheral nervous system dysfunction. Again, in our research, we applied sensory motor education and used attention as a key to perceive movement and proprioceptive differences. As you can see, there is a reduced and challenging base of support and pelvic movements affecting action forces over the ground. False anticipatory responses were also trained, so thanks to the learning process or top-down mechanisms. It must be said that these therapies can be safely applied when they are personalized and monitored. If there are existing ulcers, non-weight bearing exercise can be done. For postural control restoration, it is important to complete a focused treatment on somatosensory system, and later on, multisensory integration is needed for more functional rehabilitation targets. For example, seeing your foot mood changes muscle proprioceptive feedback. In relation to neuropathic pain education, several types of therapeutic exercise and therapies based on pain-related stress reduction have shown significant improvement in neuropathic pain scores. So, as conclusions, I want to remark that it is necessary to pay attention not only to ground reaction forces, but to how previous forces are organized for the movement with good contacts to the floor. There is a need of reducing force and fear of falling. We must to enable our patients to perform physical activity and exercise because they have undeniable general health benefits and are essential for foot and ankle nerve and vascular improvement, for diabetic ulcers prevention, and for neuropathic pain. Physical therapy is willing to go on investigating and to offer therapeutic help through non-invasive and cost-effective techniques. Here you are my email address. Thank you so much for your attention.